Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for the recognition and allowing me to join this very important and timely hearing. The Internet's remarkable power and potential have been used to create, unite, and innovate. Unfortunately, it's also been misused by bad actors to misinform, divide, and distract, preying on unsuspecting Americans. This hearing today represents a bipartisan consensus that large tech companies must reform their practices to ensure the internet remains a place of innovation and potential. The common denominator underlying the horrible things that we've heard about today is the ability for tech companies to use design practices to undermine user choice for the sake of profit. For my part, I introduced the bipartisan and bicameral Detour Act because tech companies have used decades worth of research on compulsion and manipulation, often conducted on the gambling industry, to design products that trick or strong arm people into giving up their data or consent to potentially harmful content. Today, we often call these dark patterns, and they exist on virtually every tech platform today because this data collection scheme fuels the algorithms and targeted ad programs we have decried in a bipartisan way. If we allow tech platforms to hamper Americans from making choices in their own self-interest, we will never see the internet reach its full potential. Dr. Marichal, I would like to begin with you. Can you provide us an example of a dark pattern that undermines user choice on the internet today, and what makes these tactics so ubiquitous online and so effective in influencing user behavior?
Absolutely, ma'am. Since the GDPR and CCPA, internet users have gotten used to seeing data collection consent pop-ups when they visit websites. And the point of that is to give us choice over whether or not to share, to make make it possible for companies to collect our data. But this is undermined by the type of deceptive design that you're talking about. You've noticed, I'm sure, that many of them make it much, much easier to allow the website to collect whatever data it wants than to refuse that permission or to get detailed about what data we want to allow or not to be collected. Even someone like me who's onto them, I'm often pressed for time, and so I click accept rather than going through half a dozen more clicks to limit the data collection to what is needed for the website to work properly. Ideally, sites should only be able to collect the data that they actually need to do the thing you want them to do. But at a minimum, it should be just as easy to protect your privacy as it is to give it away.
Great, thank you so much. And Mr. Golan, why is it important that we consider regulation of dark patterns that target children, especially those that cause compulsive behaviors?
Yeah, well, we should regulate dark patterns that are aimed at children for three reasons. The first of all is because, as you mentioned, they're extremely prevalent. Most of the apps and the games that children are on use manipulative techniques, finally owned by endless A/B testing in order to get kids to stay on platforms longer, in order to get them to watch more ads, and in order to get them to make in-game purchases. The second reason that we should do it is because it's unfair. You know, when the idea is to undermine user autonomy and to manipulate children, that's unfair. Just a couple of examples. There are preschool apps aimed at very young children where the characters in the game start mocking children if they try to stop playing and taunt them into playing even longer. You know, so many of the games that children play use virtual currencies that have no fixed rate. And so they manipulate those currencies, and so kids don't understand when they're buying things with real money how much money they're actually spending. And finally, we should regulate them because they cause harm to children. There's the financial harm that I just mentioned, where kids are racking up hundreds and thousands of dollars in in-game purchases, but they're also being used to drive compulsive use and to get kids to have more screen time, which of course displaces things that they could be doing that would have much more benefit to them.
Yeah, and also contribute to healthy child development. I think you're correct. And Mr. Greenblatt, you know, a lot of times we hear when we discuss dark patterns about things that companies shouldn't do. But can you you know, mentioned the social pattern library, and it considers some very important things. What are good design principles? Can you describe some of the findings and recommendations that ADL made as part of the social pattern library?
Yes, thank you for the question. A few points. I mean, number one, nudges are very useful. And we've seen services like YouTube and Twitter implement them based on our recommendations and actually decrease the prevalence of hate on their platforms. Number two, doing things like turning off the automatic auto reel that you often see on services like YouTube. So the videos keep playing over and over again, and the young people, the children, are just fed this content without actively choosing it. Number three, another design principle is you don't have to have, let's say, controversial videos. I think you have to have controversial videos, but videos that violate the policies, if you will, there's just no reason to be promoting them. They should be taken down, but while they're being viewed, you don't have to put them in search. There are lots of little techniques that product managers can do in order to iterate the results slightly in a way that is consistent with preserving freedom of speech, but that doesn't
Thank you.
promote the fringes.
And my time has run out, but I will follow up with a question for Mr. Ahmad. And thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, for this very important hearing. I yield back.